I saw how fast can you, and I couldn't see what the.
Yeah, change a tire.
I can't. I don't know. I've never had to do it.
What?
I don't know. I got tubeless tires, and I mean they're tubeless, so there's no tubes in there. So I've had a total of 2 flats,
and you just have to call AAA or.
Well, the way I look at it, I'm not gonna. It happens so infrequently where I have friends that don't ride tubeless and they're changing tires every other ride, and I'm not gonna do that. I mean, they literally are out.
Man.
You know, they're constantly getting flat. Sometimes more than one on a ride, on a 100-mile ride, and I'm just like, I'm not doing that. So I've ridden tubeless the entire time, and you know, no more. And both my flats have been since April, and both of them were on the same kind of tire, a new tire blend from Continental. So
you're not using it anymore.
Which I'm not. I don't have in my tires anymore anyway. So
yeah. Hi, Dan.
How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great, man.
So yeah, how's it going, Chris?
Man, it's going great. You know, I started this podcast, this health and wellness podcast, 5 weeks ago. I've known you for 5 years or so, maybe a little more than 5 years. Right. And I immediately thought of you when I started this, because I'm just getting an eclectic group of people that are doing all kinds of different things to improve their health, their wellness, their nutrition. And when I met you, you were just coming off of a career as an ultra runner, which I thought was fascinating. And since then, you have started these long distance, what are they even called?
It's ultra cycling, right?
Ultra cycling.
Yeah, so it's basically, I got out of ultra running and basically was just hyper focused on work, and went from running 80 to 100 miles a week and eating to support that, to working what felt like 80 to 100 hours a week and still eating as if I was, running that much. Yeah. And that caught up to me pretty fast. And so anyway, I just transitioned. I tried to get back into running because I felt like that was my identity, if you will, because I've been doing that for so long. And then just wasn't feeling it anymore. Just didn't have the passion to be out there for hours on the trails for whatever reason. I love being out on the trails. I just didn't like the running as much. And I tried to get back into it. But anyway, got into cycling. That was something new. It fed that desire and kind of fire inside me to do something the long distance endurance, but with a new sport, if you will, and something completely new. So I had all those feelings you have getting into a new sport, same feelings I had when I first got into trail running. I've experienced all of those, still experiencing all of those with cycling and all the new things with that. But what's cool is I could immediately jump into long distance events because I had the training and the mental training mainly, and all the knowledge and experience that you have training for ultra running and racing ultra running and 100-mile races. It all 100% transfers to what you need mentally for for training and ultra cycling, because it's very, very similar, and for racing too. So it was an easy transition, but gave me something new to kind of stoke that fire again. Yeah. So
awesome. So before we get into the cycling, I want to give the audience a little history of what you've done with ultra running, because you've had some amazing experiences. Can you kind of talk through the races you've run and the distances?
Yeah. Basically got into trail running. I ran cross country in high school, like a lot of people do, and you get out of school and you get into adult life and career and all that, and so I did like a lot of people do, and got married, had kids, all that, and then just struggled to just basically just stay in shape, try to keep the weight off, and would run a few times a week, 2-3 miles at a time, and go to the gym and lift a little bit and live my life, but I didn't necessarily enjoy any of that running. Someone introduced me to trail running, which I guess I'd heard of it, but certainly never done it.
Yeah.
And man, I got the very first run that I did, on the Harbison Trails in Columbia, South Carolina. Man, I did 4 miles, maybe a little over 4 miles, and it went by in a flash because the entire time I was head on a swivel, looking around, checking everything out, seeing deer and seeing squirrels and rabbits running around, and just focused on not tripping over roots and rocks. And so you weren't able to just mindlessly be running around, stomping around on the pavement in the neighborhood, being bored to death. Yeah. Next thing you know, 4 miles is done, and I'm like, wow, that was actually fun.
Yeah.
And I'd always wanted to run a marathon, but could never get through the training because I was just bored, stupid, doing it.
Yeah.
And even so, like on my second run out on these trails, I said, hey, I wonder if they have trail marathons, and started getting online. Next thing I know, within a few hours, I saw this thing called ultra running, and they were all done, and most of them were done on trails and in the mountains, and all of which I like. And within a day, I'm seeing 100-milers and beyond. I'm like, that's for me. And within a month of getting back into running and trail running, I signed up for 4 ultras. I had not even run. I guess this was going back to 2007, 2008, something like that. I hadn't even run 10 miles yet, and I signed up for 4 ultras. And this was like in October of that year, and I hadn't run 10 miles yet in one run. And I signed up for 4 roughly 50K ultras in the following year, and spread throughout the year, and ended up adding another one, adding up 100K at the end. And
50K is like 30 miles.
31 miles.
So 162.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the following year I guess the following year did my first 100-miler. So yeah, it was.
So 4 in 1 year, 1 a quarter.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
It sounds like the start that David Goggins got when he.
Well, his was a little more intense than mine. I think he went from not running at all basically and just saying, hey, I'm going to go do a 24-hour ultra, and I've got to run 100 miles in it. I think with about a week, 3 days notice, he was a little bit more. Yeah. He's a little bit more extreme than.
I was thinking about when he decided to become a Navy SEAL. He was like 300 pounds and watched a commercial on TV or a documentary or something on the SEALs, and made a decision, and then started running.
Yeah, so I guess you've read his book, right?
I haven't read his book. I need to. I've seen tons of YouTube.
You got to.
That's what everybody says.
Yeah, you got to, and even better than the book is you get the Audible.
Oh, okay.
When I was this past weekend, I was training on the Silver State 508 course, which I've got that race next month. I was training on the course in Nevada last weekend, and on the last day, I had a 120 miles to get in, which included 3 really big climbs, and bigger climbs than I'm used to doing. And I didn't necessarily plan it this way, but I'd been listening to music for the first 2 days of the training. The last day, I decided to pop in David Goggins' Audible book, and I've listened to it before, so I knew it was coming, but I just wanted to hear it again. And timing-wise, on that last day, all of the chapters in the book lined up almost perfectly for what I had on the training day. So when it came time to do those, I think it started out when he was starting buds training. Like when my ride started that day, he was getting into buds training.
The first time he went through.
Yeah, the first time he went through. So I'm climbing these 3 massive mountains back and forth, doing hill repeats basically on a mountain range in Nevada, and listening to his story. Basically while I'm spending the few hours I'm spending doing hill repeats, he's doing his buds training repeats, and I'm hearing his story. And it was not only did it help take my mind off of what I was doing, but it was like, wow, this is really cool and inspirational, and it was all cool. So I didn't plan it to be that way, but it was great. So I listened to a good chunk of his book this in that 8 hours that I was riding. Yeah. This past was that last Monday, I guess. Yeah.
You remind me of him. Just the way you get out there, get going. And when we get into it and you guys hear about the training that he's doing, it's probably very similar to what Goggins puts himself through. So you got into trail running, you ran 4 50Ks, and then the following year, 100K. What are some of the interesting races that you ran?
Man, all of them are fun. I mean, if you talk to any avid ultra runner, you got a lot of guys that range from. There's folks that go out and do a 50K every single weekend because it's more of it's a great community. That ultra running community is a great group of people. Mm-hmm. Have a lot of fun. So the sport has grown so much in the last 10 to 15 years that there's literally in almost any city, decent sized city, especially if you've got some mountains and trails around, there's going to be an ultra somewhere with an easy drive distance from you every weekend. A 50 to 100K type event or 50 mile or whatever. So a lot of people go and do that, and that's just what they do on the weekends. Like some people go play golf, other people go run around on trails for 4, 5, 6 hours, and it's a community thing. I was more, you know me well enough. I have a pretty regimented training schedule, and part of a training schedule for me doesn't necessarily mean racing every weekend. I can't go to a quote unquote timed race and go out there and just say, "Oh, I'm just going to run slow and treat it like a training thing."
Right.
If I'm in a race, I'm going to be racing,
Yeah.
So, and that's not conducive to. So I would pick a race roughly about once a quarter. And that's what I would focus on, and my training would be based around that. Sometimes I would go do a race if I had a particularly hard training weekend or something. I wanted to get a more intense workout in. I'd go do a race, but for the most part, I pick something once a quarter and focus on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are some races like I read the book Born to Run. Have you read that?
Oh yeah.
And they brought the Tarahumara from Mexico to race in I can't remember.
Leadville 100.
Have you run that one?
Yeah, I did. That was the last ultra race I did was the Leadville 100.
That just seems the amount of climbing.
Yeah.
And how many laps do you do?
There's no laps. It's an out and back. It starts in Leadville, Colorado, and goes 50 miles out across the mountains, and then you turn around and come back.
And you climb quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what the elevation gain is, but I know that it starts out in Leadville at 4 a.m. Matter of fact, I think it was either this weekend or the weekend coming up. It's in the middle of August. But anyway, it starts at 4 a.m. You're at an elevation of 10,200 at the start, and you get out the Turquoise Lake and start climbing again. And you go over Hope's Pass at around mile 40-ish, upper 30s, 40 miles, and that's 12,000 and change, 12,400 maybe. And then you come back. So at Twin Lakes, I think is the lowest point. It's only still 9,000 plus, 9,200, 9,400, something like that. And then so. Starts at 10.2, never gets lower than 9,000 and change, tops out at 12,000 something. So you're up there. But you got a lot of climbing to do because you got to go over Hope's Pass twice, and Power Line, and then just multiple other ups and downs. So,
yeah. You live here in South Carolina,
right,
where the elevation is 1,000 feet, give or take.
Right.
What kind of altitude training did you have to do prior to that?
Well, I got an interesting story about that. So anybody that's gotten into kind of trail running or cycling or endurance sports, you probably heard of altitude training. And if you live sea level, and let's call sea level anything less than a few thousand feet, it's no joke. But if you've never experienced it, you don't know any different. And it's one thing to drive through something high elevation, you may or may not even notice it. But if you start exerting yourself and making your body work, you'll notice. Most people will notice it.
Because the air is thinner.
Yeah, the air, the pressure, there's just less oxygen in the air to breathe. So your body is acclimated to whatever pressure and altitude that you live in. If you grew up and lived, or if you've spent years living in Leadville, Colorado, that's what your body's used to, and it's not going to have an issue with it. But if you live at sea level and then all of a sudden you go and decide you're going to go run a marathon in Leadville, you're going to notice it.
Yeah.
So I knew it. I'd been reading about it. I just wasn't all that sure how I was going to acclimate to that. I had a coach at the time, and he lived in Gunnison, Colorado, I believe it was, and we were going to meet. And like about a month later, we were going to meet in Leadville, and a few months before, in May of that year, we were going to meet in Leadville, do a couple of days of running together, and anyway, I fly out there, and we fly into Denver, go out there, and I had just started altitude training with a device called AltoLab, but I'd just gotten it that week, and maybe I'd used it once or twice, but I hadn't actually used it. Certainly hadn't used it enough to where my body had acclimated to anything. So I show up out to Leadville, and as soon as I get to the hotel that night, I was so excited to be in Leadville, Colorado, the famous Leadville, Colorado. I was like, oh, there's still a little bit of light out. I got time to go do a quick 5K run around town and just check it out. I was in really good shape, was running a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm not exaggerating. I got half a mile. When I left my hotel, there was a slight gradual, maybe like 1%, 2% grade. And I started running up there to get to Main Street. And I literally was buckled over, like bent over. I couldn't breathe. I mean, I had to stop running, catch my breath, and then really, I did a few miles, but it was a really slow pace. And then I meet my coach the next morning, and I was running with him, but it was, how that you can feel, how you can be running, and based off of your exertion level and your effort level, you feel like you're running a certain pace. And you maybe go to look at your watch and I'm doing a 7-minute mile or an 8-minute or whatever you feel like it is you're doing. I felt like I was doing, say, a 7-minute mile, which was fast for me, and I was doing a 10:30 mile. I felt like I was doing 7.
Man,
it was embarrassing to be there with my coach, and the altitude affecting me that much. So that was 3 months before my race, and it scared me to death because it was like, how in the world am I going to run 100 miles up here when I can barely get through, 6 or 7 miles?
Yeah.
Doing it this slow. So I hit AltoLab intensely and just followed the protocols, got on the phone with Andrew, who's the owner of AltoLab, and just really went through a strict protocol with that. And, and there was a big difference a few months later when I got out there. So anyway, so that's what I use. I still use AltoLab, and basically what that does, it's a fairly simple, relatively inexpensive device that you can take the altitude up as high as you want to take it, and you keep putting cylinders on it that scrub out each cylinder scrubs out 5,000 feet of oxygen from the air that you're breathing, and you don't use it while you're working out. You use it at the end of the day. Basically 6 days on, 6 days off. You're just sitting on the couch watching TV or whatever at the end of the day. And by breathing, basically I've got mine at 30,000 feet. So I'll spend 56 minutes basically on and off breathing 30,000 feet.
Breathe normal.
Yeah, just you're wearing an oxygen. Basically, it looks like an oxygen mask, but. You just put it on, and for an hour you're going 6 minutes on, 4 minutes off, 6 minutes on, 4 minutes off. And those 6 minutes that you're on, you've got a pulse ox meter that you're wearing on your finger, and you're basically keeping your pulse ox in the 70s while you're on. So you increase the altitude. Maybe you don't, like if you were to start doing it right now, maybe you start out at 10 or 15,000, and you're wearing the pulse ox. And you want that to be in the 70s for the 6 minutes that you're on. Once you can't maintain the 70s anymore, say you can't get it into the 70s, you're in the 80s, that means you need to stick another one on there because your body's acclimated to 10,000 or it's acclimated to 15. And if that's as high as you want to go, then fine. But you want to keep adding so that you can stay in the 70s. And now I'm at 30. And I have a hard time keeping my pulse ox in the 70s. I can stay in the 80s pretty well. But basically what that means is my body's acclimated and built up enough red blood cells to carry enough oxygen around so that when I do yeah, when I was in Nevada last week, I mean, the altitude's nothing crazy high, but I think the lowest I was at was 4,200 maybe.
Okay.
But most of the race is above 6,000, but the tops of the peaks, most of the tops of the peaks at 74. So I mean, it's still a decent altitude.
Yeah.
And I didn't even notice it. I mean, it was a complete non-issue.
Wow.
So whether that would have been the case if I hadn't been doing AltoLab, I don't know. But I'm not gonna stop doing it. And even if you're not racing at altitude, the fact that you've got more red blood cells to carry more oxygen to your muscles certainly doesn't hurt you when you're training and racing at sea level either.
It probably has a lot of health benefits. Is that hypoxia? Are you putting yourself in a hypoxic state?
Yeah, absolutely, you're putting yourself in a hypoxic state.
And the more I read about that, that's what you're doing when you work out, when you get your heart rate up, and there's a lot of benefits, it seems, for longevity. Do this, AltoLabs, live longer.
Yeah.
And
I don't know I don't think Andrew markets it that way, but yeah, if that's what it does, I'll keep doing it.
yeah, I need to buy one. Let's get into the riding.
Yeah.
We got started about the same time, although you've taken it to a degree that I haven't. I go out and ride. I've got a 32-mile out and back that I do. I try to do Saturday and Sunday when the traffic's not too bad. But you're riding. Did you ride over 20 hours last week?
Yeah, it was 21 and a half hours in the saddle.
Any days off?
Yeah, I had one.
Is that a typical week for you? Is it a low week, a high week?
No, that was on the higher end. You ranges anywhere between 15 and 22.
Okay. And you're going, I guess, on the hills, you're probably averaging 15 miles an hour, and on the flats, you're probably 20 or...
No, it's not that, because most of my training is designed for me to go a long distance and for a 500 plus mile race. So when I'm on the flats, I'm not, unless I'm doing, that day is interval training, which usually that's done on the trainer anyway. Unless I'm out doing intervals, I'll probably be doing on the flats, 17, 18.
Okay.
And if I'm climbing, it just all depends on the hill and on the grade of the hill and what power output my coach where he wants me to be on the hill.
Yeah.
If he's wanting me to take it easy on the hill, I might be going 5-6 miles an hour. If I'm hammering it out, same hill, I could be doing 10 miles an hour. But yeah, I'm not one of those guys that's doing a hill like we did yesterday at 15. I wish I could, but it's not. I could do 15 for a very short period of time.
That would be something.
Yeah.
'Cause that was quite a hill. So you've done some long races. You've done some 300, 400, 500 mile races, 24-hour races.
Well, I've only done 2 so far. And
Okay.
One was the 24-hour World Time Trial Championships in Borrego Springs, California, this past October. And in that 24 hours, I did 300 and I think it was 325, 327.
Wow.
Yeah, 325, I think it was, and. And that was, I stopped and took a 15-minute nap once and stopped another time and ate a breakfast burrito one time, which I regret doing, but, so the guy that won that did it in, I think he knocked out 520 miles, or give or take, 512, something along those lines. And I'd gone into it being my first race. I wasn't sure what to expect. I was hoping to do 400 and got 327. There was all night long that first night. There was this crazy headwind that I just knew on one leg of the loop. So after all night long of in that headwind, I knew 400 wasn't gonna. That wasn't achievable anymore.
Headwind just zaps you.
Yeah, it slowed us down so much, and even the guys that did finished and he got 5:15 or 5:20 or whatever he got, he was planning to do 5:50 or whatever. So everybody's goals shifted after in the morning when the wind died down, but it just so that was my first one, and then in April in Texas was the Longhorn 500. So that was a 500 mile race. And man, For the most part, it was a it was a great learning event for me. I didn't finish the race. I got 400, I want to say 450 something miles, and I went out there, made just a typical rookie mistake that I knew this going into it. You never go into a race with new equipment or a new pair of running shorts or a new pair of shoes, or you just don't do that. And I had ordered a new bike that I really wanted for this race, and the bike was supposed to show up like a couple of months before the race, give me time to get acclimated to it, get a proper fit, and do all this. And anyway, it shows up a week before the race, and I think I'd done a total, maybe 5 or 6 rides on this bike, and pretty much had it feeling pretty good with the fit and everything. And it just, by the time, I don't know, somewhere around 300 miles or so, I started I started having some issues, physical issues with my left knee, my butt was, things were hurting that shouldn't have been hurting had I had more time to get used to the bike.
Yeah.
And it just slowed me down a lot. So then this last portion of the course that was about 45 miles, I just ran out of time. I wasn't going to be able to do that last loop and still finish. I was going to DNF anyway. And my knee was hurting bad enough where I was worried that if I went out, there was a lot of hills on that last loop, and I was worried that I was going to do some damage if I continued on. I didn't want to risk having a lasting injury. Yeah. When I didn't have a shot at finishing anyway. I didn't have a shot at actually completing it in the allotted time anyway. Yeah. So anyway, so we pulled the plug on that, but so that was a good learning race. I learned a lot. Again, set a new personal record as far as distance in one go. So that was 400 and, like I said, roughly 450 miles. Which going into next month, so I've got a 508 mile race middle of next month in Nevada, and 2 weeks later I've got a 444 mile race, and it starts in Tennessee, goes down in Natchez Trace, Tennessee to southern Mississippi. So by me doing the 450 in April of this year, and I've been training hard since then, me being able, the mental block of saying, hey, can I do 500 miles? I know I can do that because I did 450 already. Yeah. And of course the 444 a couple weeks later. So can I do it? Yes, I know I can do it. Now it's just a matter of what's my time going to be. And let me back up by saying, you're never guaranteed. There's all kinds of things that can happen. You're never guaranteed you're going to finish a race of that distance because there's so many variables, whether it be physical, mental, weather, you name it, that can happen.
But your mind is not going to stop you.
My mind of me, but can I ride 500 miles? I know I can do that. And so that's not, that part of it's certainly not an issue anymore. So I know I can go out and do the distance for these couple of rides. It just comes down to what's the time going to be. And ultimately, I guess that's not all that important because 500 miles is not my end goal for, they're not A races for me. They're A races for me this year. Yeah. But they're also, they're both qualifiers for Race Across America. So if I finish either one of these two races and, in the time frame, then I'm now qualified for Race Across America. And which I'm qualified for Race Across the West, which is next summer.
And you're signed up for that?
Yeah, and I'm signed up for that. So that's next June. San Diego to Durango, Colorado. It's about 950-ish miles. Ooh. And so either one of these gets me qualified for that. And then, of course, then Race Across America the following year, which 3,000 plus miles.
So 2 years, that's the medium-term goal, is Race Across America. Mm-hmm. 2,000 or so miles. 3,000. It's like 3,100 miles. Yeah, San Diego to Annapolis. Yeah. San Diego to Annapolis. So California to Florida, and you're going
Annapolis, Maryland.
Or
Maryland, yeah.
Annapolis, California to Maryland. You're going across the Rockies. Yeah. You're going across the Appalachian Mountains.
And even what most people think the hardest part of the race is actually in the first two to 3 days, in my opinion, I've seen the course, been on the course twice the last 2 years, crewing for other people. A solo, Jonathan Moore in 21, and then Team BEMER.
So you crewed for Race
So
Across.
I crewed in 21, June of 21. I crewed for Jonathan Moore, which was doing it solo. So I was able to see the course then firsthand, and then this June 22, I crewed for Team BEMER, which was an 8-man team, and set a new world record for the course. Did it 5 days, 2 hours. So that was pretty cool, and we got across pretty darn fast. So
That's Race Across the West?
No, that was Race Across America.
In 5 days.
5 days, 2 hours.
A bicycle, one person
No,
across.
That was eight. That was the 8-man team.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was 8-man team with Team BEMER. And
Wow.
I think the record for a solo, Christoph Strasser, is approximately 8 days. I can't remember if he's broken 8 days yet, or it's a little over 8 days, but it's approximately 8 days. Most
Solo.
people, the winner this year did it in 10 days and a couple hours, I think. No, 10 days, 15 minutes, I think it was. Yeah, 10 days, 15 minutes.
Wow.
Something like that.
So you crewed the race,
Mm-hmm.
and the crewing is just fascinating. It took over 30 people.
No, it was 20-something people. I don't remember the exact number. It was 20-something people plus the 8 riders.
And 3 vehicles.
Four vehicles, yeah. An RV and then three vans, yeah.
And you're constantly leapfrogging each other, going for ice, going for
Yeah.
sandwiches, going for
Especially
everything bagels.
Especially with a team, it's just so much more complicated, a lot more moving parts. Where with a solo, you got 2, maybe 3. I'll probably have 3 with mine, because you got to follow a vehicle, and then you got, it depends on whether you have 2 or 3 crews. So you want to make sure one crew obviously can't do it, because they got to sleep too and take care of themselves. So the more people you can have, the more time you get to each of your crew members gets to sleep and eat and take care of themselves. Because the rider, you just want the rider to focus on riding the bike.
Yeah.
They don't need to be thinking about food, ice, mechanical stuff. They just get on the bike and pedal. That's all you need to work on.
Yeah.
That's all you need to think about, and let the team take care of everything else. No different than, I'm not a big race car, NASCAR or Formula One fan necessarily. I don't watch it on TV, but I relate to it a lot from a standpoint of, Lewis Hamilton in F1, for example. He's driving the car. He might radio in and say, "Hey, I feel this. I'm hearing this issue. There's this. There's that," and relaying what he's experiencing back to his crew. But or if he needs to change tires, somebody else is telling him, "Hey, when you come in, we're changing front tires, or we're changing right side tires, or we're doing this, or come in, it's time for fuel, or we got to do this, got to do that." And he rolls in. They come in as a team. Boom, 5 seconds, they're gone. That's the idea with a race like this too. Even my 500 milers, it's as much of a training thing for my crew as it is for me. Is I radio back to the car and say, "Hey, my bottle's running low. I need something else." They pretty much know what I want all the time anyway. But if I want something different, I'm gonna let them know.
Yeah.
And I don't have to, like when I'm doing my training rides around here, I might roll back by the car or pull into a Starbucks or something and get some water. I've got some in a Ziploc bag. I've got my, my carbon electrolyte mix, and I'm spending a few minutes mixing stuff up. And where you don't want to take the time to do all that in a race, so
Right.
you just roll by the car real quick, and you toss them the empty bottle, they hand you the new bottle, and you keep going. Or you stop for 30 seconds and do what you got to do and move on. And that's it. Somebody else is doing all of those things for you.
Your main job is to push the pedals.
Push the pedals.
I rode with you yesterday for the first time on a real ride, and you are a machine. Just pump, 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 pump. how do you keep from getting repetitive injuries to your hips, your knees, your back? How do you stay healthy?
That's a good question. I think cycling, I never really had any injuries with running either. And I think so much about, this would be true for cycling, more so with running, but I believe it carries over with cycling too, is good form and making sure you've got a proper fit on the bike. Because if you don't have a proper fit, you're too high, you're sitting too low, you're too far forward or too far back, you will have issues with your knees, or if you're leaned over too far and stretched out too far. After a few hours, you will have some back issues or dip. So you got to be fit properly for the bike. You're probably, you and I aren't the same height, or your arms and legs aren't the same lengths, and also you're not gonna, if you just jumped on my bike the way it is right now, you could ride it
for a short
but you
distance.
can't go do a long ride and be comfortable. And even if you felt comfortable for an hour, you go ride it hours and hours and hours, days in, days out, you'll start having some issues. And the same would be true if I got on your bike.
Yeah.
So that's a key. And with running, the same thing is, yes, you're repetitively doing the same thing over and over, but it comes down to good form. If you're not running properly, you will have issues. And you could still have issues, but definitely if you're not running properly, you're setting yourself up for injuries, and more impact injuries than if you run correctly and let your muscles take the load versus your joints.
Yeah.
Where cycling is definitely low impact or no impact, but those motions, if you're not fit right on the bike, and I know I am fit well on the bike, so I just don't. I'm tired, like fatigue tired, muscle tired, but not issues, not injury type.
Yeah.
So, and then doing some cross training and strength training. Mostly, it's I would love to get into the gym more and do more weight training than I do. For me, with a full-time job and everything, I'm already spending, give or take, 20 hours on the bike itself, not to mention prep time to get on the bike and getting off the bike and other stuff that I do. Then it's a lot already. So the strength training that I do try to spend, a few days a week doing strength training, push-ups, pull-ups, core work, things like that.
Okay. So, you probably never have to work on your legs.
That's up for debate. You ask my coach, you ask my strength coach, and they'll tell you, they still want me doing lunges and squats and doing things.
Okay.
But for me, you're right. I mean, my legs get a workout every time I'm on the bike, but by cross training them, you can do strength training and do work on those fast twitch muscles in your legs versus the slow twitch you're using on the bike most of the time, and it's certainly should help. But honestly, don't listen, guys. But honestly, that is the lowest priority. If I've got X amount of time to do strength training, the legs is last on the list, because I know I'm working the legs already, whereas I'm not working the other upper body. So if I've got time to get into the gym that day, the legs are usually the last on the priority list for getting something done. Yeah. So
when I hear about all of this, I know getting the proper fit on a bicycle, that's several $100s to get fit. When the kit is expensive, the clothes, the bicycles, the crews, it's a lot of money. And you have a great social media presence, and you talk a lot about the charity, Miles for McCall.
Right.
And I know you have a lofty goal. Tell me about McCall and the.
Yeah. Well, McCall is a daughter of my business partner, Nicole Wright, and Justin Wright, and her husband Justin Wright. And McCall was born in August of 2018, and a few months into her life, she had a seizure and started having some issues, and they weren't sure exactly what it was at first, and after doing a lot of testing and a lot of it, they finally narrowed it down that it was Dravet syndrome. Dravet syndrome is something that they hadn't heard of, I hadn't heard of, I doubt you've heard of, or
Nope.
doubt any of your listeners have heard of it, because it's such a rare genetic disease that I believe only affects about 250,000 people in the entire world. It's that, it's that
Wow.
rare. And so anything that's that rare, not a lot of people know about it. There's not a lot of specialists out there. There's not a lot out there for it.
Yeah.
So after a lot of testing and a lot of experimenting, they were able to, they pretty much got it nailed down. She certainly has her specialist in Memphis, and which fortunately isn't all that far away for us, but she goes there a couple times a year. For the most part, I would say under control.
Mm-hmm.
Nicole can talk to you a little bit more about that today, but it's definitely something that you've got, as a parent or a caregiver, you've really got to know what you're doing and what to do if a seizure happens, because you and I wouldn't necessarily know what to do, and that's a real possibility. And there's a lot of triggers, whether it's noises or heat or cold or light or whatever. So it's essentially a severe form of epilepsy.
Okay.
One of the severest forms of epilepsy, when it's misdiagnosed as epilepsy a lot. So, but if you went on milesformccall.org or Dravet syndrome foundation.org. So essentially what we're doing is, I want to, when I was ultra running, I always wanted to, I felt like I needed or wanted to have a cause or charity or foundation to raise awareness and money for, but never didn't really feel a closeness or an emotional attachment to anything. And so I never did. And when I started getting to cycling and ultra cycling, I wanted to do something. And then, with all this with McCall, that was a natural fit for me, because McCall's family is like family to me. And, so McCall is, near and dear to my heart. And that's what she's more like, a little sister or a niece to me. So I want to do whatever I can to raise awareness and funds for the Dravet Syndrome Foundation, which is, they raise millions of dollars a year and are funding research to find a cure, and also a lot of the money that they raise goes towards helping families that maybe can't necessarily afford to go to Memphis or helps make the quality of life a lot better for the families and the patients.
Yeah.
So, but the main thing is the research, and from what I've seen, it's one of those. It's a severe disease, but it's also a severe disease that is a genetic mutation. But they're very close to finding a cure for this, I believe. So, versus there's so many other things out there that it just seems like it goes on you can raise all the money in the world, and it just seems like it just year after year after year after year and decade after decade, even though treatment improves, it's still there.
Yeah.
And so I'm hopeful that with the awareness and raising money, that they're close on this, and it would be great to, the little bit that I can do, if I feel like if I can help make a little bit of a difference, and McCall is still, only 4 years old, give her quality of life and give her something where she can live a long, healthy life and normal life like you and I do. And if I can contribute a little small portion of that, then that's great.
Well, you're definitely raising awareness. I think even in your name on social media, you've got Dan Hartley - Miles for McCall, and it's right there. It's obvious. I remember that was, I think Nicole was there the first time we met. We had lunch in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And it was that Cuban restaurant. I haven't been back since.
Right there by PDK, I believe. Yeah.
But I think McCall was, less than a year old, maybe 6 months, and she was telling me about the seizures, and as a parent, I can't imagine just watching your 6-month-old go through seizures and
Right.
feel like there's nothing you can do. And I think it's great that you're going to raise $1 million.
That's what we've committed to do, is $1 million. Yeah.
Well, that's
and
what you're going to do.
Whether that comes from a combination of corporate sponsorship and big chunks, or 10, 20s, and 100s from just every individuals. It doesn't matter. We'll get this done, and I'll keep. I know mentally. You asked me sometime. I think you asked me a day or two ago what I think about. One of the things I focus on or think about when I'm riding, and we can get into this in a minute, but it does cross my mind, and something that I was thinking about. People have asked me, "Hey, how many? Are you just going to do Race Across America one time, or are you going to do it multiple times, or whatever?" And I got to thinking about that, and right now I'm focused on just doing it one time. I mean,
Right.
the first time and finishing it, having a respectable time.
One thing at a time.
Yeah, and whether I do it one time and call it done, or do it 10 times. But I'm thinking, I want to do this. I want to continue a commitment to Race Across America, because it is the biggest in ultra cycling, bicycle event out there, and most well known. It's been going since the 82 or 84 or something. And I think I want to keep doing it until we hit the $1 million mark, or $1 million mark, and just keep, whether that's 1 year or 5 years. I may do it longer than that. I'm just saying I want to at least do it, and because it's a huge platform to be able to get the message out there. Race Across America does, through their efforts, they do a great job of promoting the individual riders during the race and the months leading up to the race, and promoting the individual riders and their charities and all that. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure, I know they've got all the stats on their website, but Race Across America, the racers raise millions of dollars cumulatively for their charities each year. So it's a great platform. So we may be able to do it, between now and the end of the race in June of 24. It may take a few races. I don't know. We'll see. But I want to keep using that platform, because I think it's a great tool and a great vehicle to accomplish the goal.
Yeah. There you have it, folks. milesfrommccall.org, and you've got it on your jersey, which looks really cool, by the way.
Yeah. I'll have to get you one.
Oh, yeah. I would love one. You got the dragonfly on the back, and some like mathematical symbols, some triangles and circles. I mean, it's a really cool jersey. Did you design that?
They know. Well, we designed it, but yeah, they've actually, the Dravet Syndrome Foundation has actually updated their logo stuff since we got those printed. So we'll be doing some new ones going into 2023.
Okay.
So we'll get that. Hopefully, I believe we got a couple of new sponsors coming on as well. So we'll have to redo everything, but that's good.
When you print new shirts, count me in. I'll buy one.
Yeah, I'll get you one.
You're out on that bike for 3, 4, 6, 8 hours at a time.
Right.
Often late at night, because you're training for 24+ hour rides. What do you think about?
That's a great question. I get asked that a lot, and this was true with ultra running too. I think anybody, for me anyway, and most people I know that do similar sports, one of the cool parts about it is during a normal work day, most people, you just got the stressors of work, meetings, Zoom calls, phone calls. You're thinking about, is this deal going to go through, or why didn't that deal go through? And you're this or that. You might have, personal issues going on, just the stress of stuff, work. And I got to hurry up and finish this so that I can get my kids to baseball practice, or do this or do that, and all this stuff going on that's a stressor. And one of the cool things about riding long or running long, or any other endurance sport that you're going long, is after the first few miles, or first say 15 minutes, you still got that stuff going on in your mind, and maybe you're thinking about, hey, does everything feel all right? that thing I was feeling in my knee yesterday, is that still, no, that's gone. It feels good. You're kind of doing that self-check, and everything feels good. And then without even realizing it, you're not thinking about all, at least I'm not, you're not thinking about all of those other stressor things. I believe it is I've read before that it's a self-preservation, just a very primal self-preservation thing where your body and your mind cuts out and starts getting rid of unnecessary stuff. Where you're 3 hours or 6 hours, you don't even have to go that far into it. You're a couple hours into a ride, and like I said, it's not a conscious switch. But after the fact, you can be back in your car and think, you know what? I didn't think about that thing that was bugging me or stressing me or I was pissed off about or this. I didn't think about it for 4 hours because your body was in preservation mode, and it knew that it had a mission or a goal, and you were going to be on the bike for a long time, and it was more focused on getting blood to your legs, keeping blood in your brain, keeping your body doing this, because it's just a primal thing, and it just cuts out the unnecessary BS. And so it's in a, some people, if they're troubled or go away, might go to the bar and drink a little bit. Some people might do drugs. Some people might just go to sleep and say, I'm going to go to bed and sleep and not think about this stuff. And, I can get on the bike and go ride for a long time, and that's an escape, if you will, for me. And lets me, without consciously thinking about it. Sort of, I guess, if you start drinking a lot, you don't consciously switch over to that. Just after a couple of drinks in a few hours, you're not thinking about this other stuff.
Maybe.
So I've been told. That's the way it works. But yeah, that's the way it works. So now it's not like I'm out there to answer your question. What am I thinking about? That's one aspect that I like about it. So it's not like I'm out there running through and prepping for a business meeting or anything, because I can't think about it. Maybe some people can. I can't. I'll listen to podcasts sometimes. I'll listen to an audiobook. Most of the time, I'm just listening to music. I've got a playlist of a library of close to 2,000 songs in there, ranging from anything and all kinds of stuff. And it's just on shuffle. And
you have ear pods?
Yeah, I got Apple AirPods, and I've just got one in at a time. Of course, I can still hear what's going on around me. And I'll just have it on shuffle. If I don't like a song that comes out, double click and skip to the next one. Or I'll Saturday night I listen to NFL football's getting going. It was first night of preseason, and I listened to you can kill 3 hours listening to a football game. 3.5 hours listening to a football game. So a lot of times during football season, Saturdays and Sundays on my long rides, I'm listening to a college game or two, or listening to you listen to a couple football games on satellite radio, and your ride's done.
Yeah. You mentioned safety, because you've got one earbud in so you can hear what's going on around you.
Yeah.
What other kind of safety things do you have, because you're riding on the road with cars and
so I've got I will not go on a ride on the road without my Garmin radar. So I've got I hear everything coming up, hear and see everything coming up behind me. So it's a radar. I get 150 meters out under most conditions. I get an audible alert, and it tracks up to 8 vehicles at a time, displays them on my Garmin head unit, and and depending on how fast they're going, that 150 meters is it's either several seconds or maybe a second. But I at least know there's something coming up behind me.
Yeah.
And that's also anything metallic coming up behind me. So that's another cyclist even. Yesterday when we were riding, it would pick you up a number of times if you were going, even if it was just for a second, you were going faster than me, approaching me from behind, it would go off and pick you up. So not only is that a flashing red light that you can see for almost about a mile away, but it's also a radar. And then and then
So it's a red light on the back of your bike.
yeah.
I think that's one of the coolest pieces of tech that I've seen, and I got that. I got it after I got hit by a truck 2 years ago
Yeah,
on
I
my
remember
bicycle.
that. I remember that.
And I bought that radar, and yeah, I won't go out without it.
Yeah, no, that's a huge for me. And then I've got a very bright headlight up front that unless it's pitch black, I've got it on a strobe mode, which you can see for a couple miles away. So a lot of people don't use a headlight during the day. I use one and have it on a day flash.
Me too.
Because the times where I feel like I've gotten in an accident the most or been hit is not somebody coming up behind me. It's somebody where I'm coming down a road and they're not expecting to see a cyclist. They glance over, they're going to make a left turn in front of me, or they're pulling out of a driveway in front of me. And those are the times where I want to make sure those people see me as much as I do the person coming from behind. So a really bright, not just a white light that's on, but a flashing light, that strobe light, that gets their attention. And I rarely have somebody pull out in front of me where I've got to put the brakes on. It just rarely happens because they see me. And then at night, they, not only do I have those same things going, but then I've got you might not have even seen them on my bike because they're black reflectors, but they're black they're reflectors that reflect very brightly at night, but they're on my frame, on my wheels.
Okay.
And there's no excuse for not seeing me at night. I almost feel safer at night, honestly, than I do in the daytime. Because in the daytime, it's just natural ambient light that people are seeing you by. At night, it can be pitch black, and it is lit. There's flashing lights and reflection. It's a lot going on there, and there's no excuse for somebody not seeing me. On the darker the better. Almost, you're gonna see me.
Yeah. So you have tape, reflective tape, on your frame and on your wheels.
Everywhere on my frame, on my crankshafts. So I've got not just reflect everywhere on the frames, back, front, sides of the frames, on the wheels themselves, that go on both sides of the wheels. It's almost like glass particle tape that reflects back, headlights or any kind of light. It reflects it back at them. And it's not just like a regular reflector. It's some kind of glass particle reflection.
Okay.
And so it's very noticeable. And then like I'm being on the wheels and the wheels spinning, sort of like you've got some reflective stuff on your spokes. That really gets your attention. I've got them on my crankshaft, so anybody drive from any direction, they wrap around. So regardless of the direction, you're going to see that movement there. If you're behind me, I've got reflective tape on the back part of the triangle.
Yeah.
So there's no excuse for somebody not seeing me.
I'm getting those. So you've got the Garmin radar, you've got your Garmin head unit, and you ride a Trek bicycle.
Yeah, I don't do it. I've got a Trek. I've got a Trek Madone SLR9 E-Tap.
Nice.
So the group set is SRAM, Axis Red. It's all electronic shifting. 10 by on the Madone. I've got a 10 by 33, 1033 in the rear, and a 48-35 up front. So.
I don't know what that means. That's probably gear ratio.
Yeah, it's all gear ratio stuff. Yeah.
Specific to your inseam height and.
Well, no, the gearing stuff is also that's specific to what the type of riding that I'm doing.
Okay.
Is that the setup I would have if I was out doing racing crits or doing time trials? No, I would have bigger gears up front and less in the back. But,
okay.
Yeah, but for what I do, that's really for that bike, and that is the Madone is a good hybrid bike. It's a road bike. A lot of people use them for Ironmans and triathlons because it's very aero, but it's still it's not a true time trial bike, like where that's all you can do. I can still go, climb with it, and it's got a normal handlebar setup with drops and hoods, so it's a road bike, but a very aero road bike. It's not, but it's not super light like a climbing road bike either. So prior to Race Across the West and Ram, I'll go into those races with 3 distinct bikes, and each one has a specific purpose and is set up for that specific purpose. So,
like for mountains or flats.
Right, exactly. So the Madone that I'm riding now is my good general all-purpose. You know, I can use it for I can use it for anything, and it'll get the job done.
Okay.
But on something as important as Race Across the West, Raw, or Ram, or Race Across America, if you want to be competitive, you need to have type specific bike. So the Madone will get used a lot, but when it's time to climb, I'm going to have the Trek Amanda.
Yeah.
And that will have the gearing that's straight up for climbing hills. It'll have the gearing set up to climb hills.
Yeah.
Period. And it won't have aero bars on it. That bike will be set up as light as it can possibly be, with just climbing gears on it, and it's super light. So get to the base of, the Rockies, for example, or even the Sierras in California, base of the Rockies and the Appalachians. I jump off the bike I'm riding. The crew has that set, and I basically just jump off, get on the hill, and go. And
keep pedaling.
Yeah, and just keep going. Get off finish up. Get off as soon as I get finished with the Rockies, and then you're jumping on. Then you're basically going to be mostly flat all the way across the country until you get to the Appalachians. Then you get on the Trek Speed Concept, which is a true, just all-out rocket, and that's the fastest bike you can be on in the flats. You don't want to necessarily climb hills with it, but on the flats, you got that, have a disc wheel, and you're just gonna, that's the fastest you're gonna. It's an aggressive time trial bike.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're set up to be competitive.
Yeah.
But one of the things I like about you, and this doesn't take away anything, but you're a regular guy. You're not a professional cyclist. You got a full-time job. You're a business owner, and you're spending as much time as you can on the bicycle, but you're sacrificing. I'm sure to be seriously competitive, you'd have to be in the gym. You'd have to spend a lot more time on it. But you're a regular guy with a job, doing some serious races. What drives you to do this?
I'm just a competitive person. I can't. It's really hard for me to do anything halfway, really. I mean, if I'm going to spend the time training to do a race, whether it's a 5K or a 3,000-mile bike race, I want to be competitive. A lot of things would have to go my way for me to win that. But I'm not going into Race Across America thinking I'm going to win it.
Right.
But I do want to be competitive. I don't want to go to Race Across America with my goal just being, I just want to finish in the allotted time. That is not what I want to do. If that's the best I can do in 2024 based off of weather or circumstances beyond my control, then by all means I'm going to take it and finish it and be happy with it if that's the best I can do that year. But I'm going into it to be competitive and podium in the race.
All right.
That's what I'm training for, and that's just the way I'm built. And so would I like to be a professional cyclist and only have to worry about that and just worry about nothing but nutrition and working out and riding the bike? Then of course I'd love to do that, but you got to pay for all that stuff and normal bills and everything else at the same time. So yeah, it's you work in the same way you do. I mean, you and I have the same job essentially, so fortunately it's mostly phone calls and emails and occasional meetings. So you can, and a lot of what we do is you can do outside of a normal workday hours.
Right.
So it's actually a good job to have. I have a good job for this type of athletic endeavor.
Yeah.
So I mean, I honestly, the people that can do what I do and have an actual, I know a lot of people that do ultra, that train for 100-mile ultras or running events and have your typical 9 to 5 type jobs, and they're running. I mean, it's come home at 5, 6 o'clock, have dinner with the family, get the kids put to bed, and go out and run at night and come back and sleep for 4 or 5 hours and go. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I could not do that.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. And so those people are the ones that I have them just utmost respect for. It's just nuts. So.
Yeah. You mentioned something at dinner last night that I thought was fascinating. You said you like to do things that other people can't do or won't do.
Yeah. I got to be careful the way I say this, because I don't want it to sound. I don't want to sound like it's elitist or snobbish or judgmental or anything. It's just I love doing a sport and being in a race that there's very few people at the start line.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is, and a lot of that is because, not that there's, let's say in the race I'm doing in a few weeks, next month, the Silver State 508, I believe there's 15 people doing the solo, maybe 20, something like that. There are very few people doing this solo. There's some teams in there, some 2, 4, and 8-man teams doing it, but there's very few solos, and that's the ones I'm competing against, and that's men and women.
Yeah.
I want to come back to the female part of that too, with these, because I got an interesting take on that as well. But I think it's cool that, a race that pulls people from all over the world, and there's 20 people at the start line. That's it. Because most of that's because it's not that more than 20 people can't do it. Anybody can do that if they want to. If they said that they decide they want to do it. It's just, I like being part of a community that, one, most people don't even know there is a 500-mile bike race or a 3,000-mile bike race. What are you talking about? Or 100-mile running races or whatever. And much less have they done one or know of somebody that's done it.
Yeah.
But if you ask somebody, go out to lunch today and we polled 50 people, I guarantee you if you ask those 50 people, we'd find a handful of those people that have run a marathon.
Okay.
All right. And you'd pretty much almost all of those people that we talked to, those 50 people we talked to, know of somebody that's run a marathon. They've certainly heard of marathons, and they know, or they've either run or know of somebody that's done a marathon. So for me, the motivating thing to me, I like to do things. I want to accomplish something that not all that many people have done.
Yeah.
And all of your big marathons, for example, Boston, New York, Chicago, LA, Miami, you've got 10, 20, 30,000 people at the start line.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't know, it's just, if 30,000 people are lined up at the start line on any given day, to me, and again, I'm not taking this away from anybody else that does that, because there are people that run marathons way faster than me, so I'm not taking anything away from it. For me personally, it's hard for me to be motivated to train, to do something that I want it for it to feel grand enough for me, I guess, for me to be motivated to spend that much time out there. It's got to be something that I guess not that many people are doing. I know that sounds weird, and I'm not explaining it all that well.
No, it's good. It's a lofty goal, and
it just, again, that doesn't mean that I'm able to do something that other people can't do, because like I said, most of the people running marathons are going to run it faster than me. Even in my bet, when I was doing hundreds, if I was to go run a marathon, I was going to be lucky. I was lucky to, when I do run marathons, like training and stuff, I was lucky to break 4 hours.
Yeah.
And that 4 hours was there's plenty of people that can go do that. And I could, the folks that are running, 3 hours and sub 3 hours, those are very, very talented special athletes.
Yeah.
So if you whittle down those guys, they're sub 3 hour marathon, then you don't have 30,000 people at the start line doing that.
Right.
But anyway, so I guess I don't want to take away from any of that marathons or 5Ks or anything like that. Just for me personally, a driver for me and a motivator for me is that I like doing something that just not that many people, having an experience that not that many people do. I like being out there and seeing a stretch of road ahead of me, and there not being this big group of cyclists all around me all over the place. Or when I was doing hundreds, there's plenty of times after you get 15, 20 miles out into the woods on a trail in the mountains, and you're out there seemingly by yourself.
Yeah.
There's nobody, and you don't hear anybody, you don't see anything. There might be 200 other runners out there in the race, but you can go periods of time and not see anybody else, and that's cool. Or you can certainly be on a bike and not see anybody. So there's no drafting. You're not in a group. You're not worrying about
no Peloton.
Yeah, there's no. Matter of fact, drafting is not even allowed. So it's even if you were with another rider, you're not allowed to draft, and so
no drafting.
Yeah.
So I drafted you for most of our ride yesterday. We did like 38 miles.
Well, I make a good drafting. I've been told I'm good to sit behind. So.
Well, you're in significantly better shape than me. You're a faster rider. But I was curious. I know it's easier for me when I'm riding behind you than when I'm in front or when I'm by myself.
Yeah.
But does it take energy from the lead rider? Are you pulling me, or are you just riding your race and I'm tucked in behind?
As far as I know, and again, I don't do it enough to really. I don't have a whole lot of experience with it because I don't train in a group of people. But I know for a fact from doing it that you burn a whole lot less energy drafting.
Like 30%.
40% or so. And the few times that I've done group rides with people, especially if you got a good pack of people, you can tuck in a group and you're going 2-3 miles an hour faster than you would by yourself, and burning give or take 40% less energy to do it, and it's just So if you're in a good pack of experienced riders and you can constantly swap off the lead and take turns doing it, and basically whether it's 30-second pulls or 5 or 10 minute pulls. The guys up front, say you got 2 rows, and those 2 up front are pulling, and after a certain amount of time, and they go wide, and maybe you got however many rows of 2x2, and you just slide up, they fall in the back, and you pull, and those people pull out, and you just slide up and just keep it rotating, and everybody gets a break. But since I don't that's not what I get to do in a race. There's no reason for me to get used to doing that.
Yeah.
Or there's no reason for me to risk getting in a crash.
Yeah.
If I crash, it's my own fault because I screwed up and did something, but I don't want to crash or get injured because somebody ran in the back of me, or I ran in the back of somebody else, or somebody checked up because, I don't want to be in a group of people.
Yeah.
I want to take that out of the equation. And then, something I touched on a minute ago with a group, a small group in endurance events, especially true with cycling, I believe, also with ultra running, but especially with cycling. I think the distance is an equalizer for men and women.
Okay.
Because, matter of fact, a woman won, Leah Goldstein won Race Across America outright. Not just
overall
winner. Not won the female. Won overall Race Across America last year. So anytime you start getting, I did the Longhorn 500 back in April. I believe Maria Vasquez, I believe is her last name. She and I were swapping all the whole race. We were back and forth. I'd be in front of her, and she'd be, and and she ended up finishing the race, and she finished it, and I didn't. A woman almost won outright this year, Race Across America. She had a crash somewhere around the Appalachians. I think she had a couple of crashes, just probably due more to sleep deprivation and all than anything, and that took her some time to get recovered. But she still won overall female and came in third. And so what's cool about, unlike a short distance stuff, whether it be marathons or 5Ks or 10Ks, men equally trained, equally elite athletes, I guess you would say, are faster, stronger than females genetically.
Right.
Men, their high jumps or their pole vaults or their shot puts and all that, because that's a raw strength event. But so much about, almost everything about ultra long endurance events is mental.
Yeah.
And women are better at that, in my opinion, than men are in most ways. So that more than makes up for just raw strength. And again, because in a cycling event, it's your equipment, and a lot of it's your equipment too. So yes, a woman is going to be not as strong. She's not going to have that power output necessarily. Some of them do, I'm just saying. But everything being equal, let's say a woman doesn't have the same power output, wattage output that I'm going to have on the bike. But then she also weighs 100 pounds lighter than me.
Right.
Okay.
That's a big difference.
Or 80, 90, 100 pounds lighter than me.
That's
Her
another
bike,
equalizer.
Yeah. She doesn't have to put out as much power. Her bike weighs less than me because that's a smaller bike, most likely.
Yeah.
It's just, so as long as she puts in her training, she's going to be mentally tougher than me, and it's an equalizer. And so I would say most of the time it's just an all-out sprint. When it's just raw strength, I'm probably, and everything else being equal, then I'm going to be able to launch and go faster, I would say, and with most
Than an equally trained woman.
Equally trained woman most of the time. But again, you spread that out over 500 miles or even 50 or 100 miles or
and
so.
The
on
difference
training rack.
is
there's plenty of women out there
minimal.
that I can go out and train with and ride with, and it not be like I'm having to slow down.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, they're going to slow down for me going up hills. And that's experience. They're going to slow down for me on the hills if they were trying to stay with, if I was trying to stay with them. So
okay.
These are all. So it's cool to be out there in an event. So when I'm looking at the race field, it's not like I'm just looking at the men. I'm looking at the women too, because that's who. Even though technically speaking, I'm not competing against them from a pure, say in Race Across America. If I would still be the first male. Say I was there's a female category and a male category. I wish in these long distance events they would just eliminate. There's no reason to have a male and a female category. There's no reason to have it because we're equal on these long distance events.
That's interesting.
I don't know why they have that, because I could go out there and win the male, and then Leah or Maria could go out and win female, and I don't know, just I just wish they would eliminate the categories on these and just have, hey, you're a racer.
Maybe they'll do it.
We'll see.
Or maybe you'll start a race like you started, the ultra running and the marathons, and maybe you'll have your own race.
No time for that. Already no time in the day for that.
In these long races,
Yeah.
you have to be on the bike for most of the day.
Yep.
Most of the day to me means like 4 hours.
Right.
What does it mean to you?
And the upcoming 2 races that I have next month, most of the day means a 500-mile race. My goal going into next month is a sub 40 hours for Silver State 508, and that means there's no going to bed. The race starts at 5 a.m. I'll go all day. The clock doesn't stop. So on these races, there's not you race in the daytime, check into a hotel, go to bed, and get up and do it the next morning, and we have stage 2 tomorrow. No, the clock starts at 5 a.m. on September the 16th, and it doesn't stop. Well, there's a 48-hour cutoff, but it doesn't stop until 48 hours, or for you, until you get to the finish line. So yeah, you can take a nap if you want to. You can go to sleep if you want to, but the clock's ticking. So if you want to be competitive or reach certain goals, you got to keep going. So I'll start at 5 a.m. I'll probably get to the turnaround point somewhere around 18 hours at 250 miles away in Eureka, Nevada, and start heading back. And hopefully finish somewhere in the upper 30s. So that does not allow for going to sleep. So I will definitely start at 5 a.m., race all day, go all night, and all day coming back. And I'll sleep when after I get to the finish, and I'll crash pretty hard in the hotel.
I bet.
When I get back. And the 24-hour race at World Time Trial Championships, I got in the car for 15 minutes. It was a loop, so you come back around where your car was parked, and I got in the car. I don't even know if I slept, but I got in the car, shut my eyes for 15 minutes, and that was all. And I'll probably do that at some point during the 500 miler at Silver State, but there's no plan to take a nap or go to sleep. On the longer stuff, race across the West. That's a 3-day race. When you're going nonstop for 3 days, I can't expect to stay awake for 3 days and be safe on the bike, so I won't do that. But I don't know what that looks like yet, But I'll probably treat it as if it was RAM, and maybe sleep for an hour a day, a solid hour, at some point during the day, and then race across America. If you're going to be knocking out 300 miles a day on average, it just doesn't leave time for sleeping. You're going to get a couple hours a day tops. Whether some people break that out and actually lay down and sleep for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and get a REM cycle in there. Other people, it gets 15, 20-minute naps, cumulative. So and I'll play with that. That's part of what the training will entail over the next couple of years is I'll put myself through some scenarios like that and see what works best for me. Whether it's, 1 hour and a half nap or multiple 15-minute naps. I don't know, but we'll play with it, and that'll be that's part of the fun too.
Yeah.
And is experimenting with that kind of stuff. Yeah.
You ever, as you're going and you're not sleeping, maybe you haven't experienced it yet, but you ever see things or have visions, or does this lack of sleep mess with you?
I haven't. It's funny because I did a 6-hour ride Saturday night this weekend. I started, a little bit before 9 and finished up about 3 a.m. And there were times where I thought I was seeing something, but it actually was something. And just being out there and there's some, a dog or a squirrel or a skunk, or I couldn't tell you how many possums I saw. You just see things, and because your world basically consists of this little white orb in front of the bike, and you don't see much else other than that, and that's so yeah. But no, even running, I never did experience any kind of hallucinations or haven't yet anyway.
Okay. Nutrition on and off the bike.
Yeah, off the bike, general meals and eating. I eat. I don't have a specific plan or a specific diet, if you will, other than I eat clean, fairly clean. I try to avoid. I won't say I never eat anything bad. I don't ever drink or anything like that. I won't say that, but I try to make 95+% of my choices, smart, clean choices. I'm not rolling through fast food drive-thrus and eating junk food. All the obvious stuff I don't do. I'm not eating a bunch of cake and cookies and ice cream and stuff. And again, I don't say I won't ever do it. I'm just that's not on the daily menu.
Yeah.
And I just try to eat good all around, just clean, organic, and veggies, fruit, meats. Whether that be I would say mostly seafood, salmon, tuna, swordfish, steak, a few times a week, a couple times a week maybe, and like I said, fruits and veggies, and that's pretty much what I do off the bike. On the bike, eating, what my coaches had to explain to me is eating for wellness is different than eating for performance.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're on a 6, 8 or longer, especially a multiple day thing where you're doing 6, 8, 10 hours on the day on the bike, you got to eat to perform and don't worry so much about wellness.
Yeah.
Because your body's going to burn it so fast anyway. So I do eat a lot of, I eat, fruit and supplements and drink supplements. I'm not just drinking water, not drinking Gatorade or anything. I'm drinking Skratch, and it's SK, Skratch, spelled like scratch, but with a K.
Mm-hmm.
Skratch Labs, for me, I mean, they're one of the, I believe, they're one of the top endurance fuels, or fuel companies out there, and they make everything from performance drinks on the bike to recovery drinks. And they got bars and snacks and gummies, and they've got a lot of different products. But for me, that's the best one that I've used since I've been in endurance sports.
Okay.
Going back into the mid 2000s. And that I can drink it and mix it up and it's super easy to mix up in my bottles. I love the taste of it. And it's the one drink that I can do, and it doesn't have to be ice cold.
Yeah.
For me I prefer it ice cold. I prefer it like a slushy if I can get it that way. But I don't have to have it ice cold. It can be lukewarm or even room temperature, and I can still drink it. Where some other products I've used over the years, if it wasn't ice cold, I mean, I couldn't stomach it. I just didn't want it. So that's a good thing for me, because if on these really hot days, by the time I finish up, 2 hours, I might pour it and it's cold, but 2 hours later, by the time I'm getting to the end of that second bottle, it's warm.
Yeah.
And I've got some pretty good bottles that keep stuff cold, and sometimes it gets pretty darn hot around here, and it's it gets warm. But I perform well with it. The taste doesn't. I don't get tired of the taste. It's the perfect electrolyte carb ratio for me.
Okay.
And you can customize the mix between 1 scoop or 2 scoops and per bottle per hour, and I can get what I need out of it, and then supplement the carbs. My coach, basically, it's not so much about calories per hour, it's carbs per hour. And that's what I'm focused on, is carbs per hour. And if we're training, a lot of times he wants that kept down to a minimum, because we're training my body to be fat adaptive, and just so that it's comfortable using fat and not just
burning your body fat for fuel.
Yeah, and not just, oh, well, you got some carbs in your bloodstream or glycogen in your bloodstream, well, let's just use that. But so a lot of times I'll limit that to 20 or 30 carbs an hour, which is, say, 1 or 1.5 scoops of Skratch in a bottle. But on longer events or during a race, we can bump that up to 60 carbs an hour, and now it's like high octane. And so I'm doing, say, 2 scoops in a bottle, which is 40 grams of carbs, all the exact amount of electrolytes that I need. So it's like 700 milligrams, and exactly what I sweat out based off of my sweat testing. And then I can supplement that extra 20-ish grams of carbs by eating a couple of Nutter Butter cookies, or Chips Ahoy cookies, or Oreos, or some pineapples, or watermelon, or banana, or half of a ham and cheese sandwich, or that's, so when I'm on the bike, it's drinking Skratch and then eating a mixture of cookies or a chocolate chip muffin or
whatever you're in the mood
muffin.
for that day.
Yeah, I mean, I've got it nailed down to I know what works and what doesn't. But
Yeah.
you know, I don't just stop and just start piling down food. But you know, I know exactly you can have, you know, it's 2 Oreo cookies or 2 Chips Ahoy cookies or
Okay.
a banana or once an hour to go with the Skratch that I'm drinking.
Yeah.
And not only does it taste good, it's almost like a little, you know, it's like a little treat.
Yeah.
You know, once an hour, and it tastes good, and you know, so that's what I do on the bike.
You feel like your performance goes up for 5 or 10 minutes after you have the little
No,
snack?
because the way you want to do it is I want to treat the ride. You don't almost like you've got a steady IV drip the whole time, and just keep it coming in. You know, the same way with I try to time that bottle where I'm doing 1 bottle an hour, not just drinking half of it and then not drinking anything for 30 minutes and then drinking the rest of it. And then, you know, I try to every few minutes get a good squirt or 2 in my mouth and just a steady drip, if you will, just like you would on an IV. And that's what I visualize anyway, is just have an IV of fluid and carbs and electrolytes coming in. So it just stays, I want to stay steady the whole time as opposed to having spikes. If I know I've got a multi-mile climb coming up, maybe I'll eat a little bit extra, or make sure maybe I eat something maybe a little bit sooner than what I normally would, because I know I've got that coming. For me, it's easier.
It's hard to climb.
It's hard to climb. Yeah, it's hard to, for me anyway. It's hard to eat and chew something up and breathe, because I know I'm going to be breathing a lot harder. Heart rate's going to be up, and it's just going to be harder. And I want to get that done. Not only I don't want to have to deal with it on the climb, but I also want the extra energy.
Yeah.
You know, I want to make sure I'm topped off for that effort.
All right. So we talked about nutrition off the bike. One more question. My main focus is overall calories and protein, just for my general fitness, and I try to do like 75% of my body weight in grams, so I'm like 160, and I try to get 120 or give or take of protein. Do you try to break your macros down, or you?
You know, I have, and right now I need to do a better job of this. I have not been tracking my macros. At this phase of my training, I'm on the bike so many hours. I just haven't. I need to be.
You only have so much mental energy.
I need to be doing it, but when I have been doing it, I've been, you know, working on the roughly 1 gram of protein per body weight. But for me, that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot. So I usually don't hit that. I don't think it's, for me personally, I don't think it's all that important. But I get close to it. I'm probably somewhere to you, where I'm, you know, 75 to 80% protein. And the most of the rest of that is carbs and definitely I don't stay away from fat.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm certainly not afraid to have 15-ish%, you know, fat macros in there.
Yeah. All right. So nutrition off the bike, nutrition on the bike. How do you recover nutrition-wise and physically? Yeah.
The most important part of recovery for any of this, for anything, is sleep. You know, it's just, you got to sleep.
Big time.
I mean, I don't know how people do it. You know, everybody out there, regardless of what you're doing, you know, everybody can vary a little bit on what optimal sleep for them. You know, and I know you always hear you got to have your 8 or 9 hours of sleep per night. You know, that's not feasible for most people. But if you're putting on a lot of time working out, you really, really, really got to do everything you can to get, you know, at least 7, if not 8, 9 hours. It's just, if there's any possible way you can do it, and if that means not watching your, you know, Netflix and watching the movies or TV shows, you got to have your priorities, and your health and recovery is a priority. So I don't watch a lot of TV. If I've got a choice between going to bed and getting an extra hour or two of sleep, or watching some TV, I'm gonna choose sleep every single time.
There's nothing good on there anyway.
Yeah, no, not at all. So that's a big part of it. So sleep is number one, and just getting good solid sleep. That's number one, and then in addition, I also use a device called BEMER, which is pulse electromagnetic therapy. I'm not the best in the world at describing it technically, but basically it stimulates your body's blood flow into your muscles and your cells and your brain and your entire body. And I use that somewhere at least twice a day, if not 4 times a day. I take it with me everywhere I go. It's on the plane with me. I travel with it, and it goes with me everywhere. So I wake up in the morning with it for 8 minutes. I go to bed with it at night for 20 minutes, and I usually hit it before a ride and then after a ride. And that is stimulating blood flow on a cellular level and your capillaries, and basically helping infuse those muscles with blood, with more blood flow, and which in absolutely 100% stimulates and helps with and accelerates the recovery process. I need everything I can get in that way, to legally, of course, but everything I can do, whether it be nutrition, sleep, added recovery benefits, AltoLab to help with the training, BEMER to help with the recovery process. This past weekend, this weekend that we're finishing up with, what I had, heck, I forgot what day are we on? We're on Monday.
We had 6 hours on Saturday.
Yeah, 6 hours Saturday, 3 hours yesterday, and that 6 hours was at night from roughly 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. I slept, basically woke up, came to meet you. We did 3 hours with some hill intervals in there, early afternoon. And then later tonight, I've got another 6 hours. And then I'll have a rest day tomorrow, and then it's back into it with a couple, and then a few days of shorter, intense workouts on the trainer. And then next weekend Saturday is 8 hours. Sunday is 6 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the evening.
Whew.
And then Monday is another 6 hours. So it's,
wow.
You got to do, you can't sleep and recover just like, as if you just went to the gym and worked out for, lifted for an hour and got on the treadmill for 15 minutes or something. My recovery process and I take that as seriously as I do the training itself.
I imagine you have to. And that BEMER sounds fascinating. It sounds like, you're tearing down your muscles when you work out, and then I don't know the process, but I'm sure it has to do with blood flow and oxygen to those areas, and bringing in the extra protein that you're eating. And so BEMER helps to increase the blood flow, probably to the areas where it needs it most, and building the capillaries, just accelerating the blood flow to where it's needed.
Right, and you can also target. They've got there's different attachments and different parts of it. Let's say you were having not just a cycling thing, but any injury. Let's say you tweaked your knee or your shoulder or whatever it happens to be. They've got devices that just go and just focus right there, or focus right on your knee or your elbow or what have, and it targets that one area. And I don't have it, but they've also got an ultralight, red light. Have you heard about ultralight therapy? Or
I've heard of red light,
UV,
ultraviolet.
Ultraviolet. There's a component of that BEMER has with that. I haven't tapped into that yet, but So there's all kinds of extra things you can do that are above and beyond your normal, get a bite to eat and get to bed early kind of recovery type thing. I do all of that, but it's anything extra that I can do to help me be prepared to be back on the bike and doing and go at it again the next day and have 100%, be 100% ready and recovered. That's what I do, because without being recovered 100%, you're not going to have as good of a training session that next day.
And then it spirals downwards.
Yeah, and then it just
I've
starts
seen
going,
that.
Yeah, it just starts going downhill.
Yeah.
Now, in part of my training, I'm not going to be 100% recovered. You're not going to ride a bike 8 hours one day in the afternoon and the next morning get up, and because part of my training is you're not going to go out and do a 30-hour training ride to get ready for a race that's going to last you 40 hours.
Right.
But you trick your body into the best way to do that is go out and do, say, 8 hours. Like when I go do that next Saturday, 8 hours will be in the afternoon. And then I'll go to bed, and then first thing in the morning, I'll go do 6. Mm-hmm. And then that afternoon, come home, change, shower up, eat a good lunch or whatever, and roughly 4 hours from the time I finish at 6, I'm going out and getting on the bike for 4 hours again.
You're still tired the whole time.
You're still
training
tired.
on tired legs.
From the ride I did yesterday, much less the 6-hour ride I did, and then you're going out, and then that 4 hour, that 6 hour and 4 hour ride, he wants me finding some mountains and some hills to climb, with tired legs, and being tired, and then Sunday, and then getting up the next morning and doing 6 hours.
Yeah.
Again with some hills, because that's what you're going to be doing in a race. You're going to be have hills and mountains to climb on really tired legs and a really tired mind and body. So the only way you can train for that is to do it. And there's times when I've done night rides and finished up 9, 10, 11 o'clock, eat, and then be on the bike ready to go at 4 a.m. and go ride. And that's not what you want to do. Your mind's telling you, what the hell? Let's go. Let's go back to sleep. But you're going to feel that out on the race course. So you got to have the experience of fighting through that and getting back on the bike.
Yeah. What I like about BEMER, which I haven't tried, but it sounds fascinating, is that 8 minutes or 20 minutes at a time is doable for almost anybody.
Yeah.
Any schedule.
And like I said, in the 20 minutes I do in the evenings or at night I get into bed. It's on the bed. So I just lay down, and half the time I'm asleep before it finishes. So
nice.
That's not really, that part of it's not even extra time.
Nice. Dan, how many coaches do you have?
Officially, I have one coach, all right, and Endurance Performance Training Center in Mill Valley, California, and which is just north on the other side of the bridge from San Francisco. And Tim Fleming owns Endurance PTC, and he's awesome. He's Jonathan Moore's coach, who I crewed for last year at Race Across America. So that's how I got introduced to Tim. And Tim's great. Not only is he a great guy, a good friend, and just great to talk to, but he's got a lot of experience in training for ultra endurance type events. So I watched what he was able to do with Jonathan, and so I wanted to, definitely give that a shot on, for my training as well. And I was going over some numbers with you last night, and the performance increases we've seen since I started with him in the summer of last year.
Increase.
Up through last month when I was there for getting the new testing and numbers done. So it's, if you don't have, whether it's Tim Fleming or somebody, if you're serious about reaching your full potential in cycling or running or whatever endeavors you've got going on, I strongly encourage everybody have a coach that specializes in whatever event it is that you do. Otherwise, you're just winging it, and you got to have numbers and you got to have data, and you're just winging it. Otherwise, you're not going to tap into your full potential. And so if you're trying to hit some goals that are important enough to you, hire a coach. In the grand scheme of things, they're not that much money, and just do that, because you'll definitely see there's accountability there, and you will definitely see that's what they do for a living.
They're the experts.
They're experts on that, and I'm a numbers guy and very analytical, and so is Tim. And when we can do blood testing on me and actually see raw data with cool graphs and charts and all that stuff to go on with it, then I'm all about that. Yeah.
You're a numbers guy, and like David Goggins, when he heard about the pull-up record, what most people do when they hear, I think it was like 4,000 pull-ups, a lot of pull-ups in 24 hours. Most people say, I could never do that. Just like race across America in 8 or 10 days, or most people would say, that's crazy. What Goggins does is he starts doing the math and seeing how many pull-ups he needs to do every minute to break that record. And I think you're cut from the same cloth, where you see 3,000 miles, 3,150 miles, and you start breaking it down. How much do I need to do? But you're also just a regular guy. You got 2 kids. I know your son just passed his private pilot license, which is a great accomplishment. And your daughter...
As we're speaking right now, he's taking his commercial written and his flight instructor written. I mean, as we're speaking right now, that's what he's doing. So, yeah.
And your daughter runs competitively in college.
Yeah, she runs for Clemson, cross country and track,
Wow. I think it's amazing that you keep up this level of training, and you run your business, and you're a dad, and you're just a good guy. I enjoy talking with you. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah.
I think
appreciate you having me.
Oh yeah, I think what you're doing is extraordinary, but you're an ordinary person. You're just a regular guy, just like me, just like all those people out there. But you set a goal, and you work towards it, and you use a lot of tools to improve your performance. But at the end of the day, you're just a guy.
Yeah.
And I think it's great. And I think there's a lot of people out there who may fantasize about doing something extraordinary, and you can do it. Just break it down and figure out what it's going to take. Get a coach. Have a goal. Raise some money for a charity.
Yeah.
All you folks out there, please go to milesformccall.org and check it out. It's a great organization, and Dan's going to raise $1 million in the next few years, probably, I think, by 2024 by the race. But if not, I'm confident you'll do it.
Yeah, we'll get it done. Just not sure of the time frame. So we'll get Race Across America done. Don't know the hours, but we'll get it done.
Yeah.
So
I believe in you. I know you're going to do it, because I've seen you training. I watch you on your social media every day. You put in 4 hours here, 6 hours there, and you never stop.
Yeah. No, it's hard sometimes. It's not always easy, but it's you gotta get it done, and that's a lot of that is mental training, because there's plenty of times where I don't necessarily feel like going out and doing a 6-hour ride.
Yeah.
There's other things I'd prefer to do at that moment, but again, it's not a physical thing that I can't do this. You don't necessarily want to at that given moment, but you have mentally you gotta get on there. And so I just feel like as soon as you start allowing yourself to miss those workouts, or not do them, then you give yourself excuses not to do other things too. So
yeah.
But if you can get out there and knock those out, and once you start doing it, you're in it then, and you're doing it.
Yeah.
So you can always pull back on those memories and recall all those training sessions and all the efforts and everything you put into that race and training for that race, and it's just fuel for having a good race and having the confidence to know you're prepared, and you shouldn't be any doubt when it comes race time.
Yeah.
Because you put in the time, you're not thinking back like, oh man, I wish I hadn't skipped that workout. I wish I hadn't skipped that workout. Oh yeah, and then there was that one. But if you put in all the work, then it's just the race is more of a formality.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, more of a celebration of everything that you put in, and now it's just like go out and and go get it done.
Man,
Have fun.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. September 16th. Be here before we know it.
That's Race Across the West?
No, that is Silver State 508.
Okay.
And then 2 weeks later is Natchez Trace 444.
All right. I'll be watching.
Yeah.
Dan, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you having me.
Good show.
All right.
All right, we did it.
Sunday is 6 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the evening.
I'm just going to set that there in case you want it.
Okay. And I've got this too, so.
8 hours?
8 hours in the
I
morning.
guess that makes sense.
8 Saturday.
Yeah.
6 Sunday morning, 4 Sunday evening, and then 6 on Monday.
Look at that. I like where, I don't know, I like chairs because the couch are like
Yeah.